Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of our special Halloween edition of Let's Dev. The last episode, we worked on improving our game, focusing primarily on the children's pathfinding. And though not perfect, it managed to get the job done for the time, and we moved on to adding some game-centric parts of the game, such as time limits and score tracking. And today we're doing something we don't do very often, and that's put the spotlight on visuals. That's right, today's episode is all about the visual aspect of the game, and more importantly, the struggles and lessons learned from incorporating said visuals. So let's not waste any more time and get to the visuals. SWEETSPOOKS is a monochrome game that is presented in the isometric art style, and more importantly, SWEETSPOOKS is also my first real attempt at a quote-unquote HD game. Well, at least one aiming at 1080 natively. I've actually wanted to try these styles out for some time, and so I ambitiously attempted to do them all in the same project. And surprise, surprise, this ended up extending the project in ways I wasn't expecting, mostly due to inexperience. So in case you're wondering where all those Friday videos went, yeah, that time went to trying to finish this game with all the new stuff I had to learn to deal with. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about monochrome. Monochrome has actually been making a comeback recently with indie titles like Minute, and I've always wanted to try it for myself. Trying to convey visual information with so little, I feel, provides a pretty great challenge as an artist. It's the exact reason I love pixel art so much. I also decided on monochrome because I thought it fit the theme well. With such an emphasis on black, it's a great and easy way to immediately convey night/darkness. And since we're dealing with a trick-or-treating scenario here, it seemed like destiny. Yeah, surprisingly, the monochrome aspect was the least difficult thing to deal with. I actually had a much more difficult time trying to adapt to the quote-unquote HD style, simply due to the sheer scale. I mean, the final map size for this project ended up being around a whopping 6080 by 4160 pixels. That easily dwarfs just about anything I've ever done before. And as for the graphic style, I decided to stick with something familiar and use the same doodle style I used for the Let's Dev series. And yes, in case you were ever wondering, that haphazard doodle style used in Let's Dev is an actual aesthetic choice. Anyway, going for the non-pixel route this time was important to the overall experience of the project. And this is because for the first time ever, I really wanted the visuals to tell their own story. While gameplay is important, I wanted the gameplay to also contextualize an underlining story in the world without ever forcing the player to experience it. And so with a higher fidelity art style, I was able to put more emphasis on details and subtlety. But boy, did it really slow down development. Much like feature creep, I'd often find myself constantly going back and adding or changing things, and it got to a point where I had to forcibly stop myself in order to get the project done in time. But in the end though, the amount of focus on the visuals for this project really pushed my limits. And as you can see with some of these examples from the project's graphics, it was a hell of a task. But as cliche as it may sound, it also ignited a new confidence in me to know that I tried the quote-unquote HD thing and didn't completely fail at it. Yay! However, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and the art style definitely came with some technical bumps that really made development difficult. I had no idea just how difficult working with isometric graphics would be. Luckily, the art style I chose meant some leeway with the precision, but the forethought needed to make an open isometric world and make it interactive was a nightmare. Everything from construction to function felt like a battle. Now, normally when designing a world that's not isometric, it's rather simple, and keeping certain calculations for dimensions in mind is pretty easy. With isometric art, all those calculations are obviously skewed, and I was not ready for such a significant change of pace. So yeah, mapping was difficult, but working with GameMaker was a whole other beast. I can see now some of the benefits of having layers in GameMaker's room system, because trying to place objects in an isometric environment can be difficult enough, but should any two objects ever have to be placed on one another, well, good luck shifting those around in the future. Long story short, I spent hours tediously placing and replacing certain objects on the map in order to bring the vision of a simple little neighborhood to life. And we're not even finished. With pieces placed, now came the fun of depth and collision in an isometric world. Now again, in a non-isometric world, depth is pretty easy to determine, and if you're not ready for the change in calculations, the switch to isometric can be a nightmare. Now being me and being bad at math meant spending a large chunk of time trying to figure out the proper depth settings and only mostly succeeding in the end. But depth was nothing compared to the collisions. Oh no. Literal hours were spent tweaking and retweaking collisions for this map because the children constantly broke it. To cut to the chase, if I knew what I know now, I would have designed and built this map entirely different. All tweaks required reconstruction, mostly of walls. That again, mixed with the annoying layering of GameMaker's system, made for an absolute nightmare. But eventually I got there. Children weren't phasing through the tiniest of holes anymore, and were using the sidewalks like good little trick-or-treaters should. We were almost done. Now we just had to work on optimization. Now granted, this project never ever dipped below a solid 60 FPS, even at its most bloated state, but I wanted to improve performance the best I could with the mess I had. Luckily, the setup wasn't too difficult to figure out, deactivate things outside the player's view, and reactivate when needed. Since most of it was cosmetic, it was pretty straightforward. But not all of it was cosmetic, and like some horror movie come to life, the children came and broke it all again. See, disabling some items meant the children could again walk through certain areas and get themselves stuck if the player re-enters that area. Eventually, I just settled for setting up some similar activation checks for the children, forcing walls to load so they'd abide by the rules of the world. Like they should. To summarize this entire part, dealing with pathfinding, collisions, and depth without any previous experience meant I spent significant amounts of time banging my head against the wall. And it sometimes brought development to a halt until I could figure out the kinks. But the good news is the final product works, mostly. There are obviously some kinks I'd like to have worked out, but time was not on my side for this project. But regardless, I really loved the learning experience. And that, I think, is a pretty good look into the visuals for SWEETSPOOKS. As I said, the visuals and presentation were important for this project. There were deliberate choices made to tell a very specific story, one that the player could find if they wanted to. And next time, not only will you be able to experience it for yourself and search for that story if you want, or you could just watch the next and final episode where I'll reveal all. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of the Let's Dev Halloween special. Remember that if you like this video or enjoy Let's Dev in general, be sure to hit that like button. If you aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button and be sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss that final episode. And as always, be sure to leave your thoughts on the progress in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.